We're back with our guests, Patricia Mazzei from the New York Times, Mark Caputo from Politico. I want to stay with the governor's race for a second. We talked about some of the issues Andrew Gillum is dealing with. Ron DeSantis certainly has his own issues, and that sort of flared up during the debate. I want to play you something as they were going back and forth on the issue of race and bigotry. Let's play that now.
I mean, how the hell am I supposed to know every single statement somebody makes? Here's the deal. Let me just say this straight up. I've lived my life, whether it's athletics, whether it's military, whether it's serving as a prosecutor. When I was downrange in Iraq, we worked together as a team regardless of race. We had the American flag on our arm. We wore the same uniform, and we fought for the country.
My grandmother used to say a hit dog will holler, and it hollered through this room. Mr. DeSantis has spoken. First of all, he's got neo-Nazis helping him out in this state. He has spoken at racist conferences. He's accepted a contribution and would not return it from someone who referred to the former president of the United States as a Muslim, Nigger. When asked to return that money, he said no. He's using that money to now fund negative ads. Now, I'm not calling Mr. DeSantis a racist. I'm simply saying the racists believe he's a racist.
Patricia Mazzei, I mean, you wrote in the New York Times how it seems like both men want to make issues of character rather than the issues themselves, the closing arguments for each of them. But in that moment, that was a remarkable moment. Can you imagine another debate where an epithet would be spelled out on stage the way it was?
No, I mean, I think even the people who I spoke to later who were in the debate hall or on the stage were sort of like taken aback, like, did this just happen? Because you don't know how people are going to react to it. Some people really want, like, the fighter in both candidates to come out, and I think they relish that moment precisely because they wanted to show their bases. I mean, this is an election about turning out your partisan base, right? So you're going to fire up people by being fired up yourself. But my gosh, it just sort of devolved into this name-calling, bickering. We were sitting there like just looking back and forth, like, what do we write? It's the previous debate had been ugly, and this one just went like off the rails.
Mark, go ahead, weigh in.
It was like a verbal bar fight, is basically what it was. On the issue of race, which I think is really interesting in this contest, obviously Andrew Gillum is the first African-American nominee for governor of any major political party in Florida. But he is using and addressing race in a very upfront and kind of bold fashion. And there's an open question about whether this state is ready to elect the first African-American nominee for governor, first African-American governor, and whether this discussion of race is going to be maturely handled in this election. Well, and so far, I'm not sure that's the case.
I was going to say, I think the one criticism that's been fair of Andrew Gillum on some of this is bringing the two topics that we've already discussed together.
Right.
Is part of his defense on the Hamilton issue was in part by suggesting that the only reason that Ron DeSantis is raising the issue as to the free things he may have taken is because you don't think someone who looks like me could actually earn something like that.
Right, and so what I'm curious about is, just on social media, there were a lot of whites, a lot of conservatives who were really angry at that comment. And so the question I have is, in this general election, will comments like that actually produce a kind of what they call a white backlash? Or are the people who would vote against Gillum going to vote against him anyway, and that just stirs them up more? Whereas the folks who might be on the fence when they hear this message say, hey, you know what, there's a guy who fights, there's a guy who tells it like it is, I'm going to go and vote for him. I just don't know.
We've got a couple of minutes left. I want to turn to, guess what, there's also a Senate race. What? And it's been completely overshadowed by the governor's race. Most states it's the Senate race that dominates. This one is the governor's race dominates. Rick Scott, Bill Nelson, no English language debates, which is just a shame. Well, you say that half cynically, but also...
No, I mean, I actually think it's shocking. Like,
yes.
I mean, I'm glad they debated at least once. They spoke in English, but it was dubbed in Spanish for people to watch it. But, like, how could they not debate? And how does that benefit anyone? I mean, the candidates and the voters, I don't understand it.
I can tell you that I'm not allowed. I've been sworn to secrecy. I was talking to Anthony Salvanto again, the CBS pollster, yesterday. They're going to be breaking news on Face the Nation that they won't let me break here. But let me just tell you, to tease ahead, the races are very tight. They'll have new numbers coming out on CBS, and I will say that the view is that the hurricane has actually helped Rick Scott. So when you see these races, let's talk about that. How do you see that the Senate race, is it just riding the governor's coattails in terms of interest and they'll vote for the Senate race, or is the Senate race driving issues as well?
You know, there is, at least in the short term, more policy discussion in the Senate race because the pre-existing condition issue for health care has become more front and center. But as for this being a close race, the Senate race, the governor's race, it's Florida. We have razor-thin election margins, and this year looks no different.
We had a poll in the governor's race at the New York Times with Siena, and I think it had Gillum ahead by 5 points, but the margin of error is 4.1%, which means less than 1% race, which is what we expect here. I mean, if someone wins here by 3 points, it's a landslide.
Let's stay on the issue of pre-existing conditions, because I think that's been fascinating to watch Governor Scott's evolution on the whole issue of pre-existing conditions. Now trying to, over the last few weeks, distancing himself from Pam Bondi, who is suing to strike down the Affordable Care Act with the provisions of pre-existing conditions. Does he realize that health care is a vulnerability for him?
Well, he clearly does. In fact, most of the Republicans running for Senate have very similar ads say, hey, I support pre-existing condition coverage. But one of the problems for Rick Scott is that it's a little complicated, but basically in insurance world, in order to cover pre-existing conditions, you need to pay for it. He opposes the paying for it.
We have 30 seconds left. Patty, I want to get your take. The president will be here on Halloween. I don't get the impression either Scott or DeSantis is really thrilled with being there, but sort of going to be there. How do you see that playing out?
Well, the fact that Scott is going is notable because he wasn't at the last rally that the president held in Southwest Florida, and it seemed like he was probably not going to attend any more events, as Mark wrote early on. But for whatever reason, he now sees perhaps some benefit to showing up with the president and being on television, and we're going to see sort of, maybe it would have been worse not to show up and have the president call you out about it, you know? So
we're going to have that, we'll have one last big hurrah from the president here before Election Day, or maybe two. There's also rumors that he may jump in one more time. Thank you very much, both of you. All right, up next, a proposed sales tax increase for Broward, and later, we'll separate fact from emotion with Amendment 6, a measure to ensure crime victims their rights.